The 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry was not given for a wet lab experiment. It was given for a model. In 17 minutes, we will look at 3 cases published in Nature and decide, with evidence, whether artificial intelligence has already discovered a new science, or only a more powerful instrument. A new science is not a longer inventory. It is a change in the questions and in the rules of justification. What counts as proof, what may be claimed, and what stays outside. Speeding up work inside an old discipline can be historic and still not found a field. I start with the case that already has a prize. AlphaFold 2, from Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, attacked a problem almost 50 years old. Predict a protein's 3-dimensional shape from its sequence. The Nobel Committee described a leap in method, not the birth of another biology. Jumper and colleagues published AlphaFold 2 in Nature in 2021. The system predicted the structure of practically the 200 million known proteins. The Swedish Academy speaks of more than 2 million users in 190 countries. That is scientific infrastructure. Infrastructure, by itself, is not a new science. The same Nobel was split. David Baker received the other half for the computational design of proteins, not only predicting what exists, but proposing what does not exist yet. Prediction and design are different crafts. Neither invents the central question of structural biology. They change its speed. Here is the first honest rule. If a model answers faster a question the discipline already knew how to ask, we have an instrument. If it forces a change in which questions deserve to be asked, we begin to talk about something else. AlphaFold sits, today, on the side of the extraordinary instrument. AlphaFold 3, published in Nature in 2024 by Abramson and colleagues, predicts not only a protein but interactions. Proteins with other proteins, with DNA, with ligands. It is still a method inside structural biology. More reach is not another science. It is the same craft, with a wider table. Second case. Materials. In 2023, Merchant, Batzner, Schoenholz, Eichel, Cheon, and Kubuk published in Nature the GNoME work from DeepMind. The title does not promise a new science. It promises to scale deep learning for materials discovery. GNoME reported 2.2 million candidate crystals below the stability hull. On the final hull, there remained about 381,000 more stable compounds. Those figures come from the paper and from DeepMind's blog. I do not round them to make them sound larger. From that ocean, 736 had already been realized independently in the laboratory. Materials Project at Berkeley Lab received around 400,000 predicted compounds. Predicted is not fabricated. Stable in the model is not useful on the bench. A teacher can hear 2 million and think, AI has already invented materials science. No, it invented a massive filter of hypotheses inside materials science. The lab, the synthesis, the impurity, and the use remain the bottleneck. The model proposes. The bench decides. In 2023, Szymanski and colleagues described in Nature an autonomous laboratory, the A-Lab, that tries to synthesize predicted materials. The headline sounds like a robot scientist. The paper is soberer. A system that proposes routes and a laboratory that still confirms, fails, and reports. The bench did not retire. It sped up and became more visible. Third case, mathematics. FunSearch by Romera Paredes and colleagues came out in Nature in 2023. It does not ask the model for the final answer. It asks for programs. An automatic evaluator accepts or rejects. That architecture exists precisely because a model alone hallucinates with fluency. On the CAPSET problem, extremal combinatorics, FunSearch produced new constructions. DeepMind claims the largest improvement in 20 years to the asymptotic lower bound, and a cap of 512 in dimension 8. It also found new heuristics for online bin packing. Verifiable discovery. Ancient discipline. DeepMind put it this way. The first time a new finding on hard open problems appears using language models, that is a press sentence, not a philosophical definition. A new finding inside a field does not turn the field into another field. It turns the instrument into something worth serious suspicion. Fourth case, closer to a chemistry classroom. Cautionist by Boyko, McKnight, Klein, and Gomez, Nature Volume 624, 2023. A system with GPT-4 that searches literature, reads documentation, writes code, and operates hardware. 6 tasks, including optimizing palladium-catalyzed cross-couplings. Cautionist does not invent a chemistry. It automates the chemistry that already existed. Plan, test, adjust. The paper says it clearly. Autonomous chemical research with language models. Operational autonomy is not epistemic autonomy. A robot that pipettes does not redefine what an explanation is. Look at the pattern. Proteins, crystals, combinatorics, synthesis. In all 4, AI produces new verifiable knowledge. In none does it change by itself the rules of what counts as science. The evaluator, the laboratory, the theorem, or the replica remain human or at least extra model. So can it discover a new science? Today, the honest answer is not yet, and it already does something more interesting. It discovers facts, candidates, and proofs inside old sciences at a scale one lab alone cannot reach. That forces us to redefine the craft, not the name of the field. A new science would be born if the system proposed questions the community did not have, and besides, a criterion of justification that community accepted. A ranking is not enough. You need a grammar of proof. While the human supplies the evaluator, science remains human with an accelerator. The scientific method is not a school slogan. It is a chain, a question, a conjecture that can be knocked down, a prediction, a test the conjecturer does not control, and a community that can repeat it. Artificial intelligence is already strong at conjecture and prediction. Alone, it is still weak at independent test and at the community's agreement. That matters in school more than in the headline. A child who asks a chat to invent a discovery gets theater. A child who forms a question, asks for a candidate, and demands a proof recovers the FunSearch gesture. Generating more is not the work. The work is filtering. The pedagogical temptation is to celebrate generation. That is the cheap part. The expensive part is deciding what counts. AlphaFold did not opine a protein. It was measured against real structures. FunSearch did not chat a theorem. A program passed an evaluator. Without that second machine, there is only style. I propose 4 questions for any output that claims to be scientific. 1. Which old question is it answering? 2. What is the proof outside the model? 3. What would be falsified if this were false? 4. Who could repeat it without believing the brand? If there is no answer, there is no discovery. There is copy. In a classroom, those 4 questions fit on a poster. You do not need a cluster. You need the habit of not applauding the first fluent sentence. Artificial intelligence already writes like a tired expert. A real expert is recognized by what they are willing to withdraw. There is a symmetrical error, denying everything. Anyone who says AI discovers nothing did not read Nature 2023. GNoME, FunSearch, and Cautionist are not marketing demos. They are papers with figures, tasks, and limits. Useful skepticism is not contempt. It is the demand for a replica. Another error. Confusing scale with rupture. 2 million structures are not a new ontology of life. 381,000 crystals are not a new physics. 512 in dimension 8 are not a new mathematics. They are milestones. Milestones deserve proportional wonder, not mythology. School mythology sounds like this. You no longer need to think, the machine thinks. The evidence says the opposite. Where AI discovered something, someone designed the search space, the evaluator, and the success criterion. Thought did not disappear. It moved toward the design of the problem. There is a limit that is not philosophical. If the system cannot say what would falsify it, it is not doing science. It is completing text. Completing text can be right. It can also invent a citation, a crystal, or a theorem with perfect syntax. That is why FunSearch does not believe the model. It believes the evaluator. That distrust is the method, not a whim. That shift is the lesson for teachers. Teaching a chat as an oracle trains consumers. Teaching a model as a hypothesis generator with an external proof trains small researchers. The difference is not the software. It is who holds the criterion. Think of a secondary school project. Do not ask them to discover something new. Ask, formulate a question a paper already asked. Generate 3 candidates. Choose one that an experiment, a calculation, or a primary source could knock down. That is scientific literacy with AI. The other thing is genius theater. The 4 papers also teach humility with figures. 736 realized are not 2.2 million fabricated. 6 laboratory tasks are not the autonomous scientist. A Nobel for a method is not the end of experiment. Every large number drags a small number that cuts it. Teach the cut. If a student only remembers the large number, they learned marketing. If they remember the cut, they learned science. GNoME is the perfect example. The headline is 2 million. The bench is 736. Between them lives the real work. Prioritize, synthesize, fail, repeat. And if tomorrow a model proposes a question nobody had, then we would start the serious conversation. That is not yet the case these papers document. They document new answers to old questions or new routes inside a known map. That is already enough to change the school. Changing the school does not require waiting for a new science. It requires stopping the treatment of AI as a talking encyclopedia. An encyclopedia gives answers. A laboratory gives candidates. The 21st century classroom looks more like FunSearch than a fill-in-the-blank exam. Generate, evaluate. Keep only what survives. Keeping what survives hurts. The model produces volume. Volume seduces. Pedagogy has to make "this does not pass the test" socially acceptable again. Without that, no. The class fills with text that sounds like science and leaves no verifiable trace. Noise with a bibliography and no replica. I return to the Nobel. Hassabis and Jumper did not receive the prize for opining about proteins. They received it for a method the community could use, measure, and criticize. Baker, for designing. The prize honors an instrument the discipline absorbed. Absorbing an instrument is not emigrating from a discipline. That is why this video's title is a useful trap. Can artificial intelligence discover a new science? Invites a yes or a no. The evidence asks for a not yet and a yes already to something else. It can already discover new knowledge inside sciences it did not invent. That sentence fits on a blackboard. Write it with the cuts. It can already propose crystals. It does not fabricate them all. It can already improve a bound. It does not redefine combinatorics. It can already plan a coupling. It does not decide what a chemical explanation is. It can already fold proteins. It does not decide which biological question deserves to exist. If you run a school, the indicator is not how many essays each student generates. It is how many claims survive a test the chat does not control. Source, experiment, calculation, observation. Without one of those 4, the output returns to the draft tray. That is criterion in action. If you are a parent, do not ask whether AI will replace the teacher. Ask whether your child can separate a candidate from a proof. That is the skill AlphaFold, GNoME, FunSearch, and Cautiontist have in common when you look at them without marketing. Someone or something external says no. If you teach physics, chemistry, or biology, do not ask for a fairground discovery. Ask for an old question, a candidate, and a proof the chat does not sign. The 2024 Nobel does not reward a hunch. It rewards a method the community could use. Teach your students to demand that, not the headline. One last distinction for the board. Discovering a new fact is not founding a new science. Kepler measured orbits inside astronomy. He did not invent astronomy. AlphaFold, GNoME, and FunSearch look more like that. Instruments that change the tempo. The name of the field, for now, did not change. I close the open loop from the first minute. 3 nature cases plus the Nobel. A new science? No. Discovery? Yes, verifiable and cut down to size. A lesson for the classroom? The work you do not delegate is asking, verifying, and deciding what counts as proof. The model can fill the table. You choose what stays. The next time a headline announces that AI invented a field, look for the evaluator. If it does not appear, it is advertising. If it appears and is independent of the model, you are facing an instrument that deserves study. That is the difference between wonder and superstition. And it is a teachable difference. I leave you the question open, not the moral. If tomorrow a system proposes a question your discipline did not have, what proof would you demand before calling it a new science? In the pinned comment, I leave the 4 DOIs. Choose one. Read it. Mark the place